right, everybody. Hey, it's February 25th, man. This month has flown by. It's a Saturday morning in the Wood Gym, and I have a repeat guest, probably the shortest turnaround in history of the podcast in 4 years, Miss Lee Murphy. Hi, Miss Lee Murphy.
Hello.
How are you?
Thanks for having me.
Yes. Okay, so last time we had you on, you had a plethora of information, but then I got a bunch of DMs and texts. It was so much all over the place. Can we scale it down to the questions that one gentleman sent in here? And then I wanted to go over the cutting cycle of the body composition because I have an athlete that's going to come in and live with me in March, and he's got a cut for Pro Day. I think his Pro Day is March 23rd. So I know how to feed him, but if I told him to do it, he wouldn't know how to do it. So we're going to try to keep his weight, but lower his body fat. So however you want to open up of staying on point and structured to that and understanding macros and understanding calorie deficit disorder of like take in, burn, that type of jazz. Okay?
Okay. And
it's all yours.
I think it's important when we say macros, let's just start out defining that because a lot of people throw that term around and what does that mean? And
when did that come to term, recently?
Not the term macronutrient is what it comes from, and that has been around forever in the nutrition world. The macronutrient are those three things. They're things our body needs a lot of: fats, proteins, and carbs. And then water is and those are three provide calories. Let me say, water can be considered a macronutrient because we need it in large amounts, but it doesn't give us calories. So we have macronutrients and we have micronutrients, and micronutrients are vitamins and minerals, and they do not provide calories, but provide us with catalysts for reactions in our bodies and essential biochemical processes that allow us to create energy and that sort of thing. So when you hear vitamins and minerals give energy, that's not true, but they do help us create energy through biochemical processes. But anyway, back to macronutrients. So carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. So when people call them macros, there's nothing new about that. It's just getting your percentages in the order that you want. And the recommendations for percentages are actually very broad. From the national recommendations, some people might be alarmed that the national recommendations for carbohydrates are about 45 to 65% of your calories every day should come from carbs. That's the recommendations. And then for protein, it is 10 to 35% is the recommendation. Very broad. You can see range. And then for fats, the recommendation is 20 to 35%. And again, those don't add up to 100% exactly together. So you have to give and take depending on what your goals are, what your needs are, what your medical history is, what you're trying to do. All those come into factor.
I'm trying to make a lot of eye contact when I'm taking tons of notes.
That's good.
Chris got the sunglasses on. Yeah, so yes, because right now I'm trying to find, and if I should have texted you on this, but I'm trying to find somebody to come cook. And it's so hard in Knoxville to find like personal chefs that will be there when you get home, because you roughly know my schedule. It's like I get home late and then the guys are with me usually. So it'd be nice if I had a chef in the kitchen. And it's so hard to find in Knoxville because, we still are a biscuit and gravy town. It's you can't find breakfast joints, keto friendly. Do you remember, everybody in here, do you guys remember the place off Executive Park Drive that was a protein, like keto, gluten-free restaurant? It used to be, it's a church now, but it used to be, I forgot the name of it. And it was, they did like gluten-free waffles on turkey and Swiss and stuff like that. It was really cool. And of course,
find those people to come work for you.
It didn't make it.
Obviously.
Because you got Cracker Barrel right down the street. So it's like, right, whatever that is, sure, right?
I mean, right. If everybody had your restrictions, then it would have made it, right? But maybe you could find those people.
So I reached out to a couple of people and they're like, we're fine. I could do some dishes for you, but I don't know about the macros and counting it. And it's like, well, that's what it should be if you got guys in. So I went back to just doing it myself.
And, so we're in like a different niche here. So when we think about, again, I come from a public health background. It's my primary education. And in public health, we have these broad guidelines that we're trying to get the public to follow in order to live healthy lives and be your best healthy self. However, in sports nutrition, we do get down to the minutia a little bit more because, as you very well know, what you eat in training and in performance affects very directly your output and your outcomes. And so that minutia does matter in terms of grams and percentages and things like that. So when we're getting really serious, that makes a big difference. However, like I said, it still is an individualized deal in terms of your macronutrient percentages and how much carbs you're consuming, and if you're trying to cut body fat. Some people, it might work to restrict carbs more so than they normally do. However, it's so important, you cannot eliminate carbs because that is what provides us energy. It is a scientific fact that carbohydrates give us direct energy. And if you're trying to work out and lift more and get stronger, you need the energy from carbs. It's a fact. You do need the protein to build the muscle fibers and to repair the muscle fibers you're breaking down, both a little bit before, more importantly after, and maybe during, depending on how long your workout is. However, the carbs are the most important thing in sports nutrition, 100% period. So you cannot go low carb and carb free if you are trying to be your best athletic self. It's just not the best thing scientifically proven to do. However, that said, individuals have their own self-experimentation and can see how they do best. But if you are in line with scientific research, you will strive and reach your best heights with fueling from carbohydrates.
Yeah, so it's basically protein, fats, carbs, right?
Right.
And the cutting cycle, I guess that's where the body composition is hard, but not hard when I try to tell people to eat more and they don't understand that. So they revert back to eating less and their body fat goes up.
Right.
And their body weight goes down, but their body fat goes up.
That's right. And the proteins we choose need to be lean in terms of they can have fat, but we need unsaturated fat needs to be the primary focus. And that's, even the fats that are animal fats typically are saturated in nature, right? And unsaturated fats typically are your nuts, seeds, soy, olive oil, things like that. And so those provide us with healthy fats they could provide energy if we need that. But again, that energy directly comes from carbs. But we are going to have some saturated fats in our diet if we're eating protein. But we would like that focus to be on unsaturated. Seafood is a great way to do that. And in terms of emphasizing the unsaturated fats. But if you're trying to, back to your question, if you're trying to cut weight, fat, and keep your protein and lean muscle intact and maybe even build that, it is a challenge. But you need to be super aware of the type of carbohydrate you're eating, because we're talking about, whole grains and fruits and vegetables. That is what our carbohydrates should be. And then, depending on if you tolerate dairy or not. And then some supplementation can come in the picture. Sometimes some people feel like supplements, like, I know we like to focus on food, but some research shows that like glutamine and supplementation can help us to maintain muscle mass as you drop fat mass. So there's some help that you can get with assistance in that way. But the most important thing is I hate to use the word clean because it's so undefined, but you know what I mean when I say clean, in terms of unprocessed and whole foods, whole fruits and vegetables, and that, unfried things, that sort of thing.
So what would be I know we could go over the questions, but I think I actually remembered one of them is when I have guys that train at 7:45 on Saturdays, and they're going through like 10 exercises, breaking down 4 and 6. It's a big metabolic circuit day for them. Takes about an hour and 37 minutes. And a guy comes in and eats a banana at 6:30. What should he eat before that? Because then his performance goes down. So they think, okay, I could starve myself, but then they're not getting the muscle load on the weights, so then they lose muscle, correct?
Right, that's right. And I think we talked about a little last time, but let's just review that you have to fuel your furnace and fuel your fire, right, in order to ignite it and make it stronger and brighter and burn harder. So there are some people that would argue that if I don't eat in the morning, I am not as hungry and I'm fine. And there's some research that points to fat burning if you start working out on an empty stomach. Because to be honest, what else do you have? You have no circulating glucose because you haven't eaten in hours, and your body has no choice. If your glycogen stores, we haven't talked about that, but that's your glycogen stores are your short-term storage.
Your sugars
for carbs. So in your body needs carbs. You have what's in your blood sugar, your bloodstream, and then you have your glycogen stores, which is your short-term storage, and then your fat stores is next. And so anyway, in the morning, if you don't have all those are empty, you're going to go to fat stores, right? However, back to your energy, it's not going to be prime because you're having to dig so deep to get that energy, right, in your metabolic processes. And it's focus on that rather than your focus on your strength and your building and your output to increase your weights or whatever your goals are.
Right. So when I had to drop weight on the guy's fourth round on everything, he had to go basically body weight, and the other guys were doing weight, and then he's taken away from his muscle.
Because there is no energy. You have not fueled yourself in the morning to have, or whatever, before your workout, to have glucose circulating your bloodstream so that you have the energy to your cells to do that. And so certainly back to your pre-workout question, it is very important to have carbohydrate pre-workout as well as a little bit of protein. We have to be careful depending on, again, what are we talking about, event or regular training or what in terms of fat and dietary fiber. I love that, but even before workout, we don't want to push too much on the fat and fiber just for digestive issues. But carbohydrate and to a lesser amount protein is super.
Less sugar, more sugar?
Well, it depends on what sugar you're talking about, right? Because carbohydrates are sugar. But we're not talking added sugar. We're talking fruit sugar, whole grain sugar in terms of those that naturally are in those.
So what would be a sample breakfast?
Well, I've seen that somebody sometimes eats oatmeal with nuts and seeds and some protein in there. That's a great option to have. The carbs in the oatmeal, right, and the high fiber protein, not high, but that's not super high, but it's a whole grain source of carbohydrates, and then a little bit of protein and carbs in there as well. I will say, and back to supplements.
Do you have to ease into that though? Because the bowls of cereal that I show you, right? I had one of my clients force fed that to him about a month ago, and you thought he was the
cereal.
oatmeal with everything on it. And it took him forever, and I just told him it will take you a while to get adjusted to that. But once you do, your body will crave it, correct?
Yes, especially if your body is just...
Because he felt so bloated, and I don't feel bloated when I eat that. It's like I feel normal.
Yeah, and do you remember last time we talked about if you overwhelm your system with too much fiber when you're not used to it, like you said, if you're not working into it, of course you will be bloated, and because your body is not used to consume that. Just like if you never eat sodium or salt and all of a sudden you have something really salty, you feel like bloated. It's the same idea to some degree on the other end of the spectrum, that you need to kind of ease into it, or else your body will kind of be like, whoa, what's going on here? And over time that is what it needs, but it certainly is the best option. And back to what I was going to say, supplements, and I'm not talking about pill supplements, but supplemental foods like bars and shakes, they can have a place sometimes before or after for the convenience factor, because when you don't want to get up and make a huge breakfast if you have a really early morning workout. That would make you have to get up 30 minutes, an hour earlier, first of all, and second of all, unless you make it the night before, that would be great. But it's just an inconvenience for a lot of people. And so sometimes having, if you want to go to the effort and make morning oats, make them the night before, that would be great.
Okay.
Or if you want to grab a bar that you can see the nutritional breakdown, you can see the macros, the amount of carbohydrates and protein and fat, and that's exactly what you need, and you just eat that on the way to the gym. That is certainly better than nothing, and a great way to begin things. When I used to run...
But does it go for the weight too of somebody? Say this gentleman's 255. So him eating a banana...
That's not going to last.
What's a banana? 70 calories?
Right. And that might last him for the first few minutes of the working out. But if he's here for an hour doing really hard stuff, of course he had to drop weight.
Well, we had to drop weight, so there goes adding lean muscle mass, correct?
Right.
So we're counterproductive on what we're trying to do. He's like, well, I'm just getting through it. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not getting through it correctly, right?
That's right.
So post-workout, this cat, and I'm just, dialing in this guy, is... most of the time, he does a bagel from Best Bagel. I don't know if it's egg and sausage or lox and cream cheese or whatever, but is that enough for him?
Okay, so
We're talking body composition, not just losing weight.
right.
He sends me pictures of his meals and I send him pictures of my meals and he doesn't get it.
So post workout, you're immediately following. You asked me about the 30-minute kind of window. You're fueled, your blood flow to your muscles and your insulin sensitivity, and there's a lot of things happening in your body that are hungry for nutrients at that time, right after you finish. So that is why we say 30 minutes or so right after you finish is super important to refuel immediately because of the reasons if you are trying to build, you want to make sure you're getting adequate protein. But even if not, your purpose of recovery is just as much for your workout tomorrow as it is to fix what you depleted today, right? They're both equally important, or maybe even more so thinking about tomorrow, because if you're trying to make gains, tomorrow needs to be better than today, possibly, right?
Right.
So that little metabolic window is important right after, where you need to make sure you get, we can talk specifics if you want to, but the research shows 15 to 30 or so grams of protein right after. And that is important for replacing what you've broken down. But then following that up in the hours afterwards, you want to get some other fueling to get the protein back in your body so you can build those muscle fibers.
So carbs and fats, right?
Okay. Right. Well, that too, but protein. I'm specifically talking about protein there, but post-workout, carbs are important to replenish what you have just depleted in your energy to get ready for the rest of your day or whatever you have going.
Right.
But the protein is important to repair the muscle fibers that are broken down, any kind of, repair that needs to happen in your body from what you just did.
Right. So what we call in the endurance world, bonked.
Right.
Bonked.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
he totally bonked through that workout, and I had to drop stuff.
Right. And back to my...
He was white as a ghost.
Back to my...
Sat down a lot.
Right. What I was just telling you about the glycogen stores and the glucose, that is what bonking is. You run out of glycogen stores. You run out of glucose in your, you're not literally, but your circulating blood sugar, glucose, is depleted, and your first level of defense, which is your glycogen stores, it's gone, and your body doesn't have time at that point, if you keep pushing, to get fat to turn into glucose that quickly. So in that little period, you bonk or crash or whatever you want to call it in your sport. And it's not like you pass out. Some people pass out, but it's more I cannot do anything else right now. I just have to sit down because you don't have that energy from the carbohydrates. And listen, even if you're using fats or protein as energy, you turn it into glucose, into blood sugar. Your cells have to have that to have energy. So you're just helping your body if you give it carbohydrates.
And we're talking the sugars of natural sugars, right?
I mean, yes, artificial and added sugars give that as well, but we would rather we're chalking clean and trying to be our...
So like a big orange juice after, a banana after, and a protein bar, is that too much?
Well, it depends on your body weight and what your needs are, and 1 gram of carbohydrate per kilogram body weight is kind of a good starting point for that recovery, and immediately, and then kind of go from there. So so say that you are 150 pounds, right? I have and you are trying to get, I have a calculation here of 150 pounds.
Take your time.
So 150 pounds would be, there's 2.2 pounds in a kilogram, right? So that's 68 grams. There's 68 kilograms in 150.
Isn't it like your body weight for carbs, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, isn't it like most of the time for athletes 0.20 for carbs for body weight? Like you take your body weight times 0.20 and everybody's like, that's a lot. And I'm
carbs.
like, it depends on what you're doing through the day. If an athlete's doing a 3 a day, it's not a lot.
Right.
And then
the back to the.
Do you think we over protein? Because I know the ratios of all the certifications, like 0.8 is standard for protein. Then it goes 1.1 for this athlete, and I think Olympic lifters have the highest at 3.5.
That's crazy.
But they do 3 days of pushing weights,
right.
so everything's breaking down.
So, and what you're saying, just for everybody who doesn't no, those numbers is you're saying 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram body weight. That's what you're kind of referring to.
And the same with carbs.
And that, right.
And I show that scale of carbs, and everybody gets scared because we're all in this, this keto, no carb deficit.
And back to protein. For sports nutrition, so 0.8 grams per kilogram of protein, or grams of protein per kilogram body weight is for standard population. Athletes, probably a safe range is more 1.2 to 1.7 grams of protein per kilogram body weight. A heavy lifter, or football player, or someone who is doing a lot of working out might push 2 more, which is getting close to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. If you get up to 2-ish, right? Because there's 2.2 pounds in a kilogram. So, a lot of magazines not magazines anymore, but websites, I guess, will push that. And for most people, that is way too much. But if you are working out that much and you are, going to high level training in football or whatever, that might be equivalent to you. Now the 3, that is extremist. I would not recommend that unless you're working with somebody.
Yeah, like these are Olympic, not Olympic competition. Like every 4 years, the Olympic, where they live in a dorm and they do 3 days. All they do is go up and rest, eat, go down and lift. So if you don't get the proper protein, would you store fat? Would your fat go up?
Well,
if you're burning so much, if you're not getting the required amount for what you need for the output, the energy output that you're doing throughout the day.
It does kind of go back to your macronutrients, but it is total calories is what matters. If you're eating more than your body is using and needing, you will create fat because your body is like, I don't need all this, so I'm going to make fat from this.
Right.
But if you are effectively using what you're consuming, then you will maintain. And if you're not getting enough, then you will lose.
So what's
it's not that easy, but it is at the same time.
Is it 1,500, 1,200 of just total calories just to function through the day? Like just to almost not even walk, but to breathe? There's
one formula that says, this is very simplistic, and just keep that in mind. But if you take your weight in pounds and add a 0, all right, that is somewhat in the realm of your needs for the day without activity.
Interesting. I like that. Mm-hmm.
So if you, take your weight.
I'm 230.
Okay. So 2,300 calories is what you need just to kind of maintain.
Got it.
And so if you are doing a workout that you're burning 1,000 calories, that puts you over 3,000 calories a day that you need to shoot for, probably just to maintain.
Right. So if you burn too much in your calorie deficit, isn't that where would your fat know that and store fat?
So that gets kind of complicated because, it depends on your metabolic rate, what's happening otherwise. If you are not eating enough and that's chronically happening, your body, we talked about, could go into this starvation mode, air quotes, right? Of your body's like, wait a second, you're not giving me enough for your needs, and I don't know when I'm going to get more food, so I'm going to slow down my metabolic rate, and it's going to creep so that I can conserve myself.
And that's when the body fat goes up.
That's right.
So the same gentleman I talked about, when he would be in if he's 260 pounds and would take in 1,200 calories, he'd get so frustrated that his body fat was moving up, and you could see that chart from last spring,
right.
And you could see his chart, how his body fat went up from when he started. So he lost the body composition, because it's about body. Like I was trying to tell him, it's not about losing weight; it's about losing fat. Like if you want to keep your weight or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yes. There's also another, we don't need to get into this topic necessarily, but there's something called relative energy deficiency in sport that is seemingly more common in female athletes, but it definitely happens in males as well. And the name defines itself. It's energy deficiency in your sport. So you are not getting enough calories to meet your needs. It's not an eating disorder where you think you're fat or something you don't eat your body. It's not necessarily a body image thing so much. It's that you are not fueling your body for your needs. And for a female, she eventually might lose her menstrual cycle, or her body has monitors like that. A male, it's harder to tell because there's not a menstrual cycle to stop.
I find that a lot. I'm working with a couple female athletes now, and they're cutting their cows so much that, that have black under their eyes, they're tired,
Right.
they're irritable.
And listen, if a menstrual cycle stops, I know that this isn't our primary audience here, but if it does, that is a red flag that something. Everyone kind of blames on overtraining, and you can just take birth control and get it back. That's not. That's a Band-Aid over a bullet wound. That's not going to solve the problem of this underlying issue that needs to be addressed in terms of getting enough calories. So I know that's kind of another topic, but it certainly needs to be just discussed in that in those situations too, the metabolic rate is just thrown out of control because it's trying to preserve, its job is to preserve you as a human being. And so it's going to do what it needs to keep you alive.
So if I wanted to lose weight, say I'm 230 pounds, I'm taking in, it calls just to live and breathe 2,300, right? So would I burn, if I burn 500 calories a day, would I be in calorie deficit disorder in a cutting cycle to lose body fat and maintain muscle, or would I have to add more calories?
You're saying if you're trying to lose weight, if you only ate 2,300 and you still worked out, would that work? In theory, it should.
But would I lose body fat?
Well, it depends on what
I'm
you're
eating.
Yeah, so if you ate that, I mean, that should be sufficient for your body not to go into starvation mode, surely, right? If you have that many calories and you are adequately fueling. But in theory, if you are getting that minimal amount, if you want to call it that, and then you are working on top of that and making sure that back to that macronutrient proportion, you're not over consuming sugars, added sugars, and saturated fats, which are those foods that are more prone to lead to heart disease, that sort of thing. If you're having a quote unquote clean diet, then yes, that should be the outcome.
Got it. Okay.
And again, everybody is their own self-experiment. So you
Right.
can have these recommendations, and what works for you, you'll find out. And, as a public health nutritionist, I would love to say, like, this diet will work for you and you will have success. And I can say that for fruits and vegetables and dietary fiber and lean protein, these broad sweeping recommendations. But some people, honestly, as I heard from as a nutritionist, it is a fact. Some people do better with a little less carbohydrate percentage. Other people do great with a little higher fat percentage. And so that's okay. Some people do great with a very high, like a 65, 70% carbohydrate intake, which is super high, but that they thrive off that. And so it is certainly individualized.
What do you think about, I don't know if you've ever heard this. This might be like super old school since I'm older than you, but king, queen, pauper.
Right,
Eating
yes.
like that. So a bigger breakfast, medium lunch, smaller.
I think we talked about that last time, and I think
We
that's
did?
Yep, I think we did, and I think that's a great way for people, depending on when you're working out. That's
And what
a great
you're
way-
doing, right?
And I don't remember how much we talked about this last time, but there's not research pointing to that if you eat after a certain amount of time, after 8 p.m. or 9 p.m., you will gain weight. If you eat, that's no research that points to that. However, we talked about this a little bit, if you are having your largest meal of the day at 8 p.m. and then you eat another meal at 10 or 11 p.m. and those are extra calories your body doesn't need, then yes, you probably will gain weight. But if you've been working out like a madman all day long and your body is still depleted, you do need another meal at 10 p.m. because otherwise, or if you're trying to add muscle mass overnight, if you have like a, cottage cheese or some kind of long-acting protein that you have overnight, that's going to be good. You have depending on how much you're sleeping, you have these hours overnight your body needs to replenish itself and refuel and recover and repair, and those hours can be used to your advantage if you do eat before you go to bed, if that's your goal. So
if you had the 255-pound guy, what would you recommend? He trains 4 or 5 days a week. What would you recommend as total calorie for the day?
he's trying to lose.
He's trying to lose body fat.
And so,
But I think he wants to lose weight too. But I mean, it never works because, as you can see, it doesn't work for him. And we talked about this, and Griff being around me so much with the camera in the kitchen in my house is they go on these starvation diets, but then it's not real world when they Americans are number one of losing weight, not the
Right.
ones that keeping weight off.
Of course.
So then they switch back. So as soon as they go back to roosters or something, everything goes back. So this guy's like a yo-yo guy. He goes up and down, up and down. It never stays. The lifestyle's not the, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because he could lock in and be disciplined for 6 weeks and drop 35 pounds, but then his body fat will go up 4%.
Right. Because things are compensating. Because in part, the body's like, wait a second, I am not sure what's happening here. Are you starving me? I need to store some things in case I need to use this in the future, unless like this starvation keeps up and I need to reserve this fat for a longer period. What if you don't feed me? Your body doesn't talk to your brain that way and realize, your cells in your body don't realize this might not last forever. His body is kind of acting like, what, this is our new normal. I need to store some of this body fat because I don't know if this starvation mode is going to last for years, and I need to be able to keep myself alive and have some storage here. So that's kind of what's happening. The cells' brains are saying that.
Yeah.
Where his brain is thinking it's just going to be for a month or 3 weeks. Or
So a Rooster's chicken sandwich and a couple pitcher beers and wings last night isn't
probably not.
his high protein. I
That's-
can't believe
I
I
don't
get in the
think
car
that's
and he
clean. I
tells
don't
me
think
that, and I'm like, really? Like, what happened to eating home? So I mean, that's another thing, is like eating out is huge, right? Because you can't trust anything. And I know we went over that, but it's still trying to hammer to these guys. Again, Griff sees the meals that we do in the house, and it's not. I mean, yesterday's meal was I sent you a picture. I think it was pork chop, a grilled pork chop, and then I did garbanzo beans in the skillet with garlic and spinach, for a
Right.
vegetarian protein bowl. And then I made, I brought them here, slices of sweet potatoes with
That
olive
is
oil
amazing.
drizzled over cinnamon, and it was
That
a
sounds
perfect meal.
amazing.
I mean, it was
Perfect.
clean, and,
Yes.
and it was, but he didn't get it. And then
Did he enjoy that?
he was at Roosters. But then I ate another one, like, because I was so hungry. That was at like 5:45, 6. Then I had another pork chop and did the same thing because it's so clean, right?
Right, yeah.
So it's all about eating more when you're clean, not eating less when it's dirty.
That would be great. That's a
Right.
great way to describe it. And you had also asked me about kind of snacks or for hunger, things that
Yeah.
I don't know if you want about clean. Again, that word is could come with lots of meaning, but everybody kind of gets the gist that your description of your meal was much cleaner, in quotes, than the other meal of the fried chicken and the beer, right?
Right.
So that everybody kind of can get that.
And going to sleep at midnight.
That right.
And then waking up at 6 to try to train in here with a banana. I mean, I don't know what I have to do. I think I got to take one of these baseball bats and hit him over the head.
Well, it's interesting because you talk about that, and I see a lot of guys my age that are out of college that they're like, oh, I got to drop weight, I'm getting fat. But then they lose muscle, and they're getting really skinny fat.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
like
that's
all
a
the
skinny
muscle
fat we
and
talk.
their
Yeah.
arms are going away, but then it's all in their stomach. So they're like, oh, I've lost 20 pounds, and they've been doing like Adderall, not
Right.
eating, and then
Right.
just like, it's all in their stomach. Their
Right.
gut health's horrible.
Right.
You're right. The skinny fat is huge. And I think, again, Griff shooting the dog for the last 2 years and really doing these days in the lives and coming through the house so much, I'm always feeding him, and I was like, but it's all good food. I mean,
Right.
everything we eat is so good, right?
I've put on 8 pounds in the past 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And
it's
he looks
like
good.
good weight.
Yeah. Yeah, he looks
That's
good.
great.
And, he's a genetic freak anyway. So when he starts lifting weights, he'd be like that because we don't starve our body. I just don't believe in starvation. But you're right, though. The college kids are always about
Well,
it.
it's interesting because I think so many people become reliant on other services to provide them health, but in reality, the two things I've always heard is it's not like with nutrition, it's a lifestyle change. And so you have to be adapt for the long haul. But the second thing is I've noticed with huge leaps is when you cook at home. And people don't want to cook at home
Right.
because they feel like they don't have time to.
Right.
But in reality, when you do, you
Did
become
you-
a lot more disciplined.
That's true. Did you learn some of that in nutrition class?
I did. Absolutely.
It's a game changer.
Well, I learned a lot of it too when I did that triathlon or the half Ironman like 2 years ago because I had to learn because I would bonk all the time.
And when you do something like that and put yourself in as your own experiment, it's so amazing the things you learn about yourself and just about fueling in general as well. I mean, the days that you during that, if I can ask you, the days that you maybe didn't eat as well, when you train the next day, you feel it, right?
Oh, you crash. Yeah, for sure.
And it's when you're pushing yourself for endurance reasons and otherwise, or from Charlie's guys in terms of getting stronger or whatever your MO is, you still are having the direct benefit or detriment of your nutrition.
Oh, for sure. I think even prior to the race, like I calculated I was going to burn probably like 8 to 10,000 calories within a 6-hour span. Yeah. And so I went and met with Eddie, and then Eddie's like, you got to be eating 4 to 6 days prior to be able to get your body right for it.
Especially Ironman and long distance things, endurance things, even half irons, there's no way you can keep up with your losses. And to be honest, it's okay if you don't, because if you did, you'd probably feel heavy and overloaded. But you just have to work on not depleting so much that your output decreases. You just want to stay on that edge of getting enough so you keep your output and performance the way you want, and not getting low enough so you bonk or crash, but not getting too much so you feel bloated and uncomfortable. There's then that takes a lot of training to find that within that.
Well, I think most people have the stigma of like, most people, they're like, if I eat less and I work out more and I drink less, then it'll result. And there's just like, that's when that race taught me a lot. But then also this and.
Well, like you said, Eddie was right, and I'm sure you were right. You got to back at least 3 days. I have all the time people are like, well, I'm doing an event tomorrow, so I should carb load tonight with pasta and everything. I'm like, no, because your body's not going to know how to use that.
Right,
it's going to throw everything off if you've not been eating that way, correct?
That's right. And we haven't talked too much either about hydration. Hydration in all this is super important as well, because especially when you're doing endurance activities, to make sure, that week before your event for endurance sport is important for your hydration. Kind of like your glycogen stores, you want to be full. I always use the example, remember, glycogen stores is short-term storage of carbohydrates. And if you're going to drive across country from Knoxville to California, you want to start with a full tank of gas, right? You don't want to have to stop in Crossville to fill up, right? You want to try to make it at least most of the way across the state before you have to fill up, right? And so the same thing if you're doing something endurance, you want to have your glycogen stores as full as they can be so you can go a little bit longer before you have to refuel. And you will have to refuel if you're doing high weights or high endurance or whatever, but you want to start off your best self until you get to that point. And so
like the gentleman that just left, he went through his workout. It was so intense. He looked like Casper the Ghost when he was done. What would a 255-pound man I think he counted like 9,000 or 900 calories he burned. Is that bagel enough?
Well, first of all, he should be getting some protein with that bagel. The bagel's good. You do need the carbs, mm-hmm. You need the calories. And again, I think even a lot of people that are focused on muscle strength forget carbs are important, because carbs are still the energy for recovery and for fuel. And protein is very important, but protein does what protein can only do. And you want the carbohydrates to give you the energy, and then the protein can be used to build muscle and antibodies and the repair tissue and all of that.
But for recovery, because he's going to be gone. I mean, he was bonked, and I was like, you might be sitting in the chair the rest of the day if you don't get something in you like now.
And that is I'm guessing a blood sugar issue. And if he drank some juice and which is of course very quick acting sugar, then he's not going to be back to be able to lifting in 5 minutes. That's not going to happen.
Right.
But he is on the road to recovery. It's like when you get dehydrated. Everybody's been dehydrated at some point in there, hopefully not hospitalized, but feeling like you just didn't drink enough. Right. And sometimes you have a headache, or you just feel just not right. And thank you as you drink your water. But it's super important. You can't, once you get behind the ball, you can't catch up by drinking extra water. It takes you a long time to recover from dehydration. And not like months, but certainly you can't drink a gallon of water and be okay if you're dehydrated. It doesn't work that way. It takes a little bit. So similarly with the recovery nutrition, if you've not, how do I say messed up, but if you haven't taken the right steps and kind of are having consequences like you bonk or you aren't you're not going to be able to just bounce back in 5 minutes. It's going to take some recovery to get back to feeling it's probably not going to be till tomorrow or the next day till you feel recovered. Just think about if you have ever fasted, mm-hmm. or for religious reasons, or because you are sick or whatever reason, and it takes you a long time to get back to yourself after you've not eaten for a while.
Right.
It's because your body's had that long period without food and fuel.
Well, like this huge day that he just had. I mean, he jumped, he weight trained, he everything was, it was a whole mix. It was a bag of toolbox. So would he do the breakfast, another breakfast, and a big lunch, and just stay big today with food?
So back to your question. So that bagel is great for the carbs, right? He needs some protein for, we said 15 to 30 grams is what research shows within that window of immediate. I think we talked about last time, there's no need to get 100 grams in there. First of all, your body cannot process, I'm talking about once, 100 grams at once, these 100-gram bars of protein or shakes. That's silly. Your body cannot process that much.
Right.
It's not. But he could have, 20 to 30 grams of protein right after you eat, and then within an hour or two, do that again and get some more protein in, and then have your meals throughout the day to finish up.
Right. So what the common mistake people make is, especially when they have the watches now that show all the calories burned, so they go into starvation mode. So they think, okay, I burned that, so I want to make sure I don't.
Right.
I want to lose weight today instead of gain weight, but they don't understand they have to replenish. So I like the word replenish is better, or recovery, than I'm going to starve my body.
Right. That's true. And I do want to say technology, we all get reliant. I'm guilty of using my watches, your how you feel about yourself, like if you whether it's steps or calories burned or whatever, but that's not exact. That's just formulas they're using as well. You can't rely 100%. One time this was when watches first came out a long time ago, and you had to wear the strap around.
Yeah.
And something happened to my watch, and I did the exact same workout 2 days in a row. One was a Timex and one was a Polar. It was back in those days before
I had
Apple
the
Watch.
Polars. Yeah,
before.
I had the Polars.
This was a long time ago. But the exact same workout 2 days. I had like a 400 calorie difference between the two technologies. And my point is, I know that was a long time ago, and technology
But the Polar
has advanced.
ones, those basic ones, are the ones I used all the time when I had all the motocrossers
Right,
in town, and it just did the max, the average, whatever it was, and the total calories. But you put your weight; it was easy. I mean, you put your weight, your height.
That watch is using a formula.
Yeah.
And although if you're consistent with it, it's being consistent with you. Whatever, if that exact number is right or not, consistency is the important thing. However, we just need to try not to get obsessively focused about that, because that might not be exactly what's happening. It's best to be in tune with your body. And
that's what I was teaching, because I found that the motocrossers were getting too used to the watches. So in the mornings, if your heart rate's before your feet hit the floor, you measure your heart rate. If it's over 72 or something, you might be overtrained, and then they'll be like, "Oh, I can't train today." And I'm like, "Well, you're only in town for 4 days, so we have to train. We got to figure something out." So I thought, and that's when I abandoned a lot of the technology with me, because I was like, you can't go off that all the time. You don't know how you're going to feel after you get up and get moving and get a breakfast in or whatever, right?
That's right. Sometimes it can be helpful. Sometimes even I'd be on a treadmill and I'd do the same workout and my heart rate would be miraculously different, significantly different between the two times. And maybe that was because I was overtrained. Maybe I was stressed about something. And so sometimes it's interesting, but other times I don't know if it was honestly something in the treadmill that was messing with my watch.
Right.
I'm some kind of technology issue. I don't know, because I felt totally normal and I didn't feel like there was anything else going on. So sometimes it's very helpful to be able to find out things that you're not aware of. Other times it might just be bad technology.
Do you keep your work rate when you walk?
In terms
do you know what you do? Like, do you go out on your walks? When I see you walk, do you go out on your walks and go, okay, I'm going to do this route? I always think before I go, I'm going to do this route. And then how many calories do you burn on those walks?
Well, I actually am generally running. I just walk up the hill.
Oh, gotcha.
That's my cool down. But I honestly am really, running
Sorry, you're a jogger.
No, I run the same 6 to 8 miles route, whatever, depending on my time.
Right.
How much time I have is what I mean during the day. And then I walk up the hill past your house.
Yeah. So do you keep the work output?
Yeah, and it's sometimes some days you're just not feeling it. It just some days you just got to get it in, and other days you're feeling like you might want to run a little stronger or faster, and it has my rate and that sort of thing in terms of my pace.
Right.
But when I was training for marathons and triathlons, of course I was a lot
Sure.
more focused on that. Now I'm just kind of doing it for fitness, and so I'm not as focused on that at the moment. But certainly it's a very good tool when you're training for something in particular.
Yeah, I mean that's what. So he's got to ramp up his breakfast. I always say pre-workout to end workout. You know what I'm saying? I just don't think I think he thinks he's going to be too full, but I don't think he practices it enough, because Saturday it's always a banana. And I was like, I can't eat all that. Well, you're not doing it enough to get your body acclimated
and
to
actually, Griff and I were just talking about that a few minutes ago about getting a schedule, right? And you have to give it a try with a little schedule, right? And try for, just give me 2 weeks of trying it. You can't say 2 days, because that's not going to work. Like back to like your gluten example, it takes sometimes weeks, sometimes months to get gluten completely out of your system if you've had a bout or something happening with right. Sure. You can't just go gluten free for a day. Right. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
So similarly, trying to get in a habit nutritionally of doing something for a couple weeks, see how it feels, and then and if his outcome of performance, it'd be interesting to measure that to see if he consistently, or if person consistently eats a breakfast over the
and
period.
And he can keep the weight for all 4 rounds.
Right, and see, so you can actually quantify that. Like, look, when you ate breakfast for these few weeks, you were able to lift harder, stronger. We didn't drop weight. This is what your outcome was.
Right. Okay.
And so, wait, I don't think we talked about the snacks yet. I just wanted to say, when people are looking for just snacks throughout the day, or what do I do for, if I'm feeling my blood sugar dropping, if you know what that feels like, or if you're just not feeling down, or you're crashing or whatever.
Right.
I always recommend people to have some carbohydrate with some protein for those snacks that you have. I mean, it's great if all you have can do apple, but if you get apple and peanut butter, that's better, because the apple gives you that energy, and the peanut butter has a little bit of healthy fats and healthy protein, or amino acids, and those kind of stay on your stomach a little longer, but also are giving you.
And peanut butter's good. I find I use it a lot, but a lot of people that I talk to are like, I don't want the saturated fats. I'm like, well, you can't get Skippy, right?
Well, peanut butter in effect is predominantly unsaturated fats. The natural ones might have less things added to them.
Right.
But certainly that's going to be, again, from a public health perspective, it's kind of like when people talk about the different types of water, like, are they alkaline or this or that? Like, I just want you to drink water. You can get in that minutia if you want to, if it bothers you, but I just want you to drink water. Like, so I would rather you have peanut butter than fried chicken, right?
Right.
So,
or roosters, pitchers of beers. You're not listening. Yeah. All right. So, guys, did we cover everything? Did we get everything that we're trying to get? Of like, the cutting cycle is huge, because I'm about to do it with one of my running backs that's getting ready for his pro day, and I text both of them yesterday. I'm like, one more week of bulking. I call it bulking and cutting. That's like old school terminology. Right. And they're like, okay. And I was like, just trust me on that, because I want you a little bit stronger, and then we could.
It's the same concept of carbohydrate loading, to be honest with you.
True.
Because carb loading, you get high amounts of carbohydrates right before your event, and then you ramp up carbs as you decrease your output. Right. Getting ready for those glycogen stores to be as full as possible. That's so, kind of the same concept what you're doing, but focusing on, I guess, if we're using the word cutting, just being, again, this word as clean as possible in your choices of lean proteins and unsaturated fats.
And the macros.
Right. And the carbohydrates you choose to be whole grains, and, like you said, the oatmeal and the sweet potatoes and brown rice and things like that. Yeah. And it's honestly, it's hard to overeat that stuff.
I always have a question when everybody goes to, like, say, Cava or Chipotle, and we're at lunch and nobody's trained yet, and they're like, white rice or brown rice. And I'm like, how did they not know that? So tell us the difference between, pre or after workouts.
Well, so you mean in terms of the whole grain?
The white rice and brown rice.
Well, in theory, and it's kind of like whole grain pasta versus white pasta. In theory, the whole grain and the brown, and the ones that have more dietary fiber and more nutrients, less refining to the product, you want that on a more regular basis.
Slower.
And it takes longer to digest because of the dietary fiber that we talked about last time, that it's our best friend, and all of the nutrients that are not extracted from it. The white stuff does have its place in recovery, or refuel, when you need immediate energy, or during your event, or, if you need, if you're doing an endurance event, you don't want to eat oatmeal during a 100-mile bike ride.
Right, but we're not doing the white for lunch if we haven't done anything.
That's right. You want to consider brown, and meaning brown rice, whole grain, whole wheat pasta, all of that, not wheat for you, but just the whole grain product to be 95% of the time.
Got it.
And then the refined things can have a place for
But like after Griff
immediate
did
energy.
his triathlon, he
Yes,
could have a big
absolutely.
Chipotle with white
need,
rice.
He needs
Right.
white during that time because you need it to get to
Six-pack.
your.
Yeah.
You need that to get to your
24.
cells as fast as possible so that you
Right.
can refuel yourself.
Right. You'll feel better
Because that fiber will take it longer to get to your cells,
That's
so
true,
you
right.
need that sugar faster.
And a big, I'll wrap this up, but I still know this one: white potatoes over sweet potatoes.
Same kind of idea. And the sweet potato is also the white potato is not a bad guy. The guess what? The peel. I mean the skin.
I love the skin.
That's the best part because it's the dietary fiber, right? Please eat the skin if it's cleaned. Wash it.
I love the skin.
That is the best dietary fiber part. That's the roughage that we talked about last time. But the color.
How about the potato skins at Calhoun's? Can I eat those?
No. That's the added thing.
Those are so good.
I haven't had those before.
You haven't had them? Are you kidding me?
It's like potato chips, basically.
Oh no, they're cut up in like quarters. Guys, have you had the potato skins? Yeah. And you could get the pork potato skins.
no,
So
Joe.
pork, bacon, cheese, and then you dunk it in the barbecue sauce with the sour cream.
Next level.
That's next level.
Let's go back to vegetables.
Skins,
Okay.
veggies, broccoli.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the sweet potato, the color in the sweet potato, it's so simple. The color means it has vitamin A in particular for sweet potatoes, but other nutrients as well that are higher amounts.
But a baked potatoes, I always tell
It's
athletes,
not-
eat a baked
yes,
potato.
Of course,
Right.
yes. A baked potato is not a bad guy. Same with, some people think bananas have like,
Too much sugar.
what? No. Listen, no one's ever become obese by eating bananas.
Right.
That is a fact.
Right. I've never met a fat person eating fruits and vegetables.
It's just, it doesn't, that those have their place. And if you're focusing on the amount of sugar in banana, that's not the most important thing that is in the big picture of healthy eating. And
I do a lot of guacamole.
that's great.
Guac's good, right?
They had unsaturated fats
Mm-hmm.
and some fiber in there. Also, you can put some salsa in it with it.
Yeah, my daughter made me one 2 days ago. She split it in half and drizzled it with honey and like a little cayenne pepper on it or whatever. It was delicious. Yeah, it was really good.
a great cook.
But too much avocado, right? You could eat too much
Well,
of it.
there are more calories in avocado because of the fat.
Right.
So it is a vegetable, but it's not the same type of vegetable as kale or spinach because, you have to eat a whole lot of kale and spinach to equate the calories in an avocado. But again, they're good. It's like peanut butter. They have nutrient density and calorie density, energy density. So they have both, but the nutrient density is important in terms of vitamins and minerals.
What about sodium? Is it 1,000 milligrams a day? Because what happens is I got a lot of athletes and fitness people talking to me, and they're buying like the egg witches and everything at Trader Joe's. You've been to Trader Joe's?
Yes.
Trader Joe's has a lot of novelty items.
They
Yeah,
do.
it does.
It does. They have like some really cool
Just
stuff.
Trader Joe's stuff.
Yeah, but you're like, now watch it, like the frozen egg witches, with the sausage. I even bought a box and I looked at the consumption. One was like 630 grams of sodium. Is it 1,000 a day?
It's 23 to 2,400.
Oh wow, I was way off.
But guess what? Like a serving of rice-a-roni or pasta-roni probably has over 1,500 or something, or sometimes 2,000. Or sometimes
I haven't heard
2,500.
rice-a-roni since I lived in New Jersey.
But my point is processed grains or any at a restaurant.
Right.
You can get. I always give the example of my students. Did I talk about this last time can I talk about a certain restaurant? Is it okay?
Yeah, what do you got?
Well, just
Rip 'em.
McDonald's. No, everybody, no.
Griff's been hanging out with me too long.
Did I do my McDonald's question for you last time?
No.
What would you all guess is the highest sodium containing food at McDonald's? What would you guess?
The French fries,
I would.
hash brown.
Most people.
Okay,
and
are
when
we
I ask my
talking
students,
breakfast, lunch?
It just across the board. Well, across the board. When I poll my students, and the most common answer is French fries, like Griff
Egg
said.
McMuffin?
All right, okay. Ben.
I would have said the fries.
Okay. One would think fries because you can see the grains of salt on it. Fries are actually on the lower end. They only have a few hundred milligrams.
Chicken nugs.
It's actually one of the most.
Tell us!
The big breakfast Which is
with
like
the
hot-
sausage and
yes,
the pancake.
but
Your
yes.
dad used to get that when he played.
Hotcakes.
Yes, he
It
loved
is
the
hot
hotcakes.
And like pancake, like you don't think of pancakes as being salty, right?
Yep.
But and obviously there's some kind of salted meat. I mean, or
Yeah, it's a sausage patties.
But
yeah.
but it's that processed meat that is high in sodium. But my point is, sometimes it's something you wouldn't think.
No,
you know?
no.
That's much higher than. I'm not encouraging to go get
I haven't
McDonald's
been
French
McDonald's
fries.
in years because of gluten.
But the point is, it's very surprising sometimes the
Yeah.
amount of, because there's like well over 2,000 milligrams of sodium in that big
So
breakfast.
sodium, but for an athlete, sodium's good.
Well, to a point.
Right.
You don't need, some athletes,
Do we get enough sodium in our foods?
yes,
And
do not need to supplement sodium. On a very rare occasion, an endurance athlete might need to supplement sodium because they're expending so much through their sweat.
Right.
And that is a case by case supplementation issue. But most people get more than enough through their diet, and I'm talking way more than is needed in even athletes. Even if
gotcha.
you're sweating a lot,
Right.
there's no reason you need to. Most people need to think about eating more sodium. Again, there's some instances where you're sweating a lot, and some people need to think about that. But majority of individuals do not need to focus on getting more.
But the frozen stuff that, again, at Trader
Or
Joe's, that
canned,
you see all
frozen,
that stuff, right? The
canned,
sodium's high. I
processed,
always say
yes.
watch it because it's like, oh, it's only 190 calories for the egg which.
Right, but then look at the daily value percentage. That will show you the percentage
Got
of
it.
your
Ooh, I
needs,
like
and
that.
sometimes it's like 90%
Right.
or whatever.
Off that one little thing, you're done for the
right.
day.
Right, no more sodium for you.
More sodium for you. All right, I think I wrapped it up. I think we got some good stuff today. I'm so glad you came back with
Thanks
this
for
because
having me.
I hope we, come on, just listen. Just listen, Diamond. Just listen to what we're doing.
Don't forget 5 a day again. We didn't talk about this. I'm at 5 fruits and vegetables
Yes.
every day. We
You
haven't
remind
mentioned
me
that
of that
yet.
a lot.
Yes,
I like
5
that.
fruits and vegetables and dietary fiber. Don't forget that carbohydrates are our friend for energy.
Right.
And protein is very important, especially post-workout.
And if you want to get through the workout with the prescribed weight, you got to eat.
Beforehand.
Right.
Ideally,
Beforehand.
yes.
And that's what happened this morning.
Carbs and
Yeah.
protein. A little bit of protein, but carbs.
Right. That's what happened. You got anything?
Well, him not eating, does that lead to him being more injury prone?
Yes, that 100%. I'm sorry we didn't even mention that. If you're
Great one.
if you don't have the energy before you're
I feel like
working
he's gonna
out,
get hurt.
absolutely, you're
what?
much more.
He's gonna get hurt, like-
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's true. That's a
Because
great point.
if
Yeah.
you weren't there to drop his weight, he would have kept that on there,
That's
and
right.
then could have gotten hurt. So
Well, I
that's
saw
in
it,
my
like,
little
you-
article. It
yeah.
says, it's but definitely about that's your risk for injury in addition to not having energy is exponentially increased.
That's,
so
big time. That's a
super
good one.
important.
That's a real good one.
Well,
Thanks.
I was curious because like sometimes if I don't eat, and like the places that like I hurt where I have like issues with will feel more enhanced, and I'll actually end up getting worse compared
Yeah.
to like when I'm hydrated and
Right.
I'm eating well.
Yeah.
And I was like,
And
Yeah,
your brain's
that's-
thinking, I can do this, but your body's like, I don't have the energy to do it. And then you keep pushing it, and then
That's true because all my strains and pains are in the when I do morning workouts and I've had 28 cups of coffee and no water and I pop something always on the inside of my thigh from like doing a reverse lunge with 15 pounds. I'm like, what the hell? And it's
because they say the first thing you're supposed to do in the morning is like drink like 1 to 2 bottles of water.
Yeah,
because,
like-
the organs and the kidneys.
Yeah.
Like that, right?
that's
Yeah.
not a bad habit to have,
no.
for sure.
And I do like 16 cups of coffee before.
Let's do
It's
water.
so bad. It's
You are
so
getting
bad.
a little bit of hydration from that. But
Really?
I mean, yes. But I don't want to encourage that habit, so let's just focus on.
Isn't she cute? I don't want to encourage that habit. Honey, you don't know half my habits. All right, we'll wrap it up.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much, Lee. I
Thank you,
appreciate
guys.
it. I hope we answered a whole bunch of questions. Thanks. Have a great Saturday.
That pancake thing blew my mind.
Didn't your dad I used to train his dad when he
Aw,
played.
and he
He used to crush that McDonald's right there where the old goals used to be. He used to crush it every time.